My beloved child, stop for just a moment, because something happened in public that your soulmate never planned to reveal. They were surrounded by people, surrounded by conversations, surrounded by eyes watching every little move, and yet, when your name entered the conversation, something inside them changed. They could have stayed silent. They could have smiled and moved on. They could have hidden what they had been carrying for so long. But they didn't. Instead, they finally said something that made everyone around them pause. Don't skip, because the words they spoke were not ordinary words, and the most unbelievable part is that they were not prepared for the reaction that followed. Your soulmate had been trying to control their emotions, trying to appear unaffected, trying to convince everyone that you were simply someone from their past or someone they could forget. But when someone asked them directly about you, the mask disappeared. Their voice changed. Their expression changed. And then came the confession nobody expected. What they said next revealed something much deeper than simple attraction. They admitted that you were the person they kept thinking about when nobody was watching. They admitted that certain memories of you had never left their heart, even when they tried to bury them beneath silence and distance. But then they said one sentence that completely changed the atmosphere: I never stopped choosing them in my heart. Imagine the silence after those words. People who had been talking suddenly stopped. Someone looked at them in disbelief. And your soulmate realized that they had just said out loud what they had spent so long hiding. But stay with me, because that was only the beginning. Something huge is waiting for you. There was another part of their confession that made the people around them realize this was not a passing feeling. They revealed that there had been moments when they almost reached out to you, moments when they opened your conversation, looked at your name, and then closed everything again because they were afraid of what admitting their feelings would change. And here is where this becomes impossible to ignore. Your soulmate did not simply confess that they loved you, they confessed that losing the connection with you changed the way they looked at everything afterward. They said they had met people, heard opinions, followed advice, and tried to move forward, but something always felt incomplete. Then someone asked them the question that nobody expected: if you could say one thing to them right now, what would it be? Your soulmate became quiet. For several seconds, they said nothing. And then they finally answered with words that revealed the truth they had been protecting for far too long: I would tell them that I was never as over them as I pretended to be. That sentence hit everyone in the room. But there is still one final detail you need to hear, because after making that confession publicly, your soulmate did something that could change everything between you. Stay till the end, because what happened immediately afterward may explain why you have been feeling that something is about to shift. Part 2. The room was still processing those words when your soulmate looked around and realized there was no way to take them back. For the first time, they were no longer hiding behind excuses or pretending that everything was fine. Someone asked, "Then why did you let them go?" And the answer came after a long silence: "Because I was afraid that I wasn't enough for them." That confession revealed the real battle they had been fighting privately. They had not been distant because they stopped caring. They had been distant because their feelings became stronger than their confidence. They remembered moments when you needed reassurance, moments when you deserved honesty, and moments when they wished they could go back and say what they were too afraid to say. Don't skip, because the next part of their confession exposed something nobody in that room knew. Then your soulmate admitted that there was one particular moment they could never forget. They described standing somewhere alone, holding their phone, staring at your name, and wondering whether they should finally tell you everything. They almost reached out. Their fingers were ready to send the message. But at the last second, they stopped. Why? Because they suddenly realized that saying, "I love you," would mean accepting that you still mattered more than their pride. And then came the sentence that made everyone completely silent. I realized I could lose them forever if I kept pretending I didn't care. My beloved child, this is why their public confession matters. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It came from a place they could no longer hide. Stay till the end, because there is still one revelation about what they intend to do after admitting all of this. And then, instead of ending the conversation, your soulmate made a decision in front of everyone. They said they were tired of letting fear speak for them. They said that if they ever got another chance to stand in front of you, they would not hide behind silence again. They would look directly into your eyes and tell you the truth they had been carrying all this time. But just when everyone thought the confession was finished, someone asked one final question. If they walked through that door right now, what would you say? Your soulmate took a breath and answered, I would tell them they were loved long before I ever had the courage to admit it. And that sentence changed everything, because the person asking the questions then revealed something your soulmate never expected to hear, and that revelation is where the next chapter truly begins. Part 3. Something happened after that confession that nobody in the room could have predicted. The person who had been questioning your soulmate suddenly became quiet, looked at them carefully, and said, "Then you need to stop waiting." Your soulmate froze. Those words seemed to hit a place they had been protecting for months. They looked down, took a slow breath, and admitted that they had already been thinking about how to approach you again. Not with empty promises, not with a dramatic speech, but with the truth they should have spoken much earlier. Don't skip, because what they revealed next explains why their public confession was so emotional. They said they had realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the person you cannot stop thinking about is the person your heart never truly released. Then they revealed the detail that made everyone understand how serious this was. They had kept one small reminder connected to you, not because they were trying to live in the past, but because it reminded them of the version of themselves they became when you were in their life. They admitted that whenever they felt uncertain, they remembered your words, your patience, and the moments when you believed in them before they could believe in themselves. Something huge is waiting for you, because the confession wasn't really about proving their feelings to everyone else. It was about finally accepting those feelings themselves. And when someone asked whether they would actually tell you everything, your soulmate gave an answer that nobody expected: yes. This time, I won't make them guess. But there was one final twist. Before leaving, your soulmate looked at their phone again. Your name was still there. Their finger hovered over the screen, and this time they didn't close the conversation. They started writing. Not a casual greeting. Not a simple, "How are you?" They began with the words, "There is something I should have told you a long time ago." Then they stopped for a moment, gathered their courage, and continued. Stay till the end, because this is where the public confession becomes personal. The next message was meant for you alone, and whatever happens after those words are sent could finally reveal whether the love they confessed publicly is about to become the truth they share privately. Part 4. The message was almost finished when your soulmate suddenly stopped typing. They read every word again, wondering whether they were finally ready to be completely honest. Then they deleted the message and started again from the beginning. This time, they wrote without trying to sound strong. They simply wrote what they truly felt. I need you to know that my silence was never because you meant nothing to me. It was because you meant more than I knew how to handle. And after sending it, they put the phone down and stared into the distance, as if they had finally released something they had been carrying for far too long. Don't skip, because what happened immediately after that message was the moment that changed their entire mood. Their phones suddenly lit up. They saw your name appear, and for several seconds they couldn't move. They had imagined this moment countless times, but imagination was different from reality. Their heart raced as they opened the response. They expected anger. They expected questions. They even expected silence. But instead, your response contained something they had secretly hoped to hear for a very long time. It wasn't a dramatic confession. It was just one simple sentence that made them close their eyes and take a deep breath. I always wondered if you felt the same. Your soulmate read that sentence again and again. Suddenly, all the uncertainty they had been carrying began to disappear. Something huge is waiting for you, because this was no longer one person confessing alone. For the first time, both sides were finally standing at the same emotional doorway. Then your soulmate made a decision. They didn't want another conversation through a screen. They wanted to see you face to face and finally say everything without hiding behind carefully chosen words. They began planning what they would say, but they realized something important. They didn't need a perfect speech. They only needed courage. And before ending the night, they wrote one final message. When I see you, I want to tell you the truth about everything I never said. Then they pressed send. Stay till the end, because the next moment may be the one your soulmate has been waiting for all along, the moment when a private feeling becomes an honest conversation, and one question finally gets answered. What were they really trying to say when they confessed your love in front of everyone? Part 5. The next morning, your soulmate woke up with one thought repeating in their mind, this time, I have to tell them everything. They didn't know exactly how the conversation would unfold, but they knew they could no longer hide behind uncertainty. For so long, they had wondered what would happen if they finally admitted how deeply they cared. Now the confession was already out in the open, and there was no reason to pretend anymore. They looked at the message they had sent the night before and noticed something they hadn't realized before. Their hands were no longer shaking. For the first time, they weren't afraid of their own feelings. Don't skip, because what they decided to say when they finally met you was far more emotional than a simple declaration of love. When the moment finally came, your soulmate saw you and suddenly forgot every sentence they had prepared. They just stood there, looking at you, realizing that the person they had spoken about so openly was finally standing in front of them. Then they smiled softly and said, there is something I need you to know. They told you that the public confession wasn't meant to create attention. It happened because someone asked a question they could no longer answer with a lie. They admitted that they had tried to convince themselves that time would make their feelings disappear, but instead, time only showed them how much your presence had changed their life. Then they revealed the part they had never told anyone. I wasn't waiting for someone better. I was waiting until I became brave enough to be honest with you. Something huge is waiting for you, because those words finally explained the silence that had confused you for so long. And then came the question that could change everything. Your soulmate looked directly at you and asked, "Do you still feel something for me?" For a moment, neither of you spoke. The world seemed strangely quiet. Your soulmate wasn't demanding an answer. They were simply waiting, ready to accept whatever truth you gave them. But before you could respond, they added one final sentence. "Whatever your answer is, I needed you to know that my love for you was real." And that was the moment you understood why their public confession had been so powerful. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about finally giving you the truth. Stay till the end, because the answer to that question is about to reveal whether this story was only a confession, or the beginning of something neither of you expected. Part 6. For a few seconds, you simply looked at them. Your soulmate could see the uncertainty in your eyes, and instead of rushing you, they waited. Then you finally spoke, and your first words were not what they expected. You said, "I was waiting for you to tell me the truth." Their expression changed instantly. All the confidence they had gathered seemed to disappear for one beautiful moment. They looked down, smiled, and whispered, "So you knew?" You didn't answer immediately. You simply reminded them of all those moments when their actions said what their words never could. Don't skip, because your soulmate then admitted something that made the entire confession feel completely different. They confessed that every time they walked away from you, they secretly hoped you would somehow understand what they couldn't say. They had mistaken silence for strength, distance for protection, and hesitation for wisdom. But now they finally understood that hiding love doesn't make it disappear. It only makes the heart wonder what could have happened if someone had been brave enough to speak. Then they looked at you and said, "I don't want to spend another day wondering what we could have been." Your soulmate wasn't asking you to forget the past. They were asking for one honest chance to create something different from this moment forward. Something huge is waiting for you, because then they revealed why the public confession happened when it did. They said that someone had recently asked them what their greatest regret was, and without thinking, your name came to their mind. Not because they regretted loving you, but because they regretted allowing fear to make decisions that belonged to their heart. That's why, when your name came up publicly, they finally stopped protecting their pride. They said, "If everyone knows I love them, then at least they will never again have to wonder whether I did." Your soulmate then reached for your hand and waited for your response. And this time, there was no audience, no performance, and no carefully prepared speech, only two people finally facing the truth. Stay till the end, because the next thing they say will reveal what they truly want from you now.